In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you how a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade would have a massive impact on the Pelicans' future. Plus, Willie Green might be safe, but maybe not as head coach. It's a Tuesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday, and we got a lot to talk about. The Bucks are kind of in crisis meltdown mode here, and the Pelicans are really going to benefit from this, I think, in a variety of different ways. Joe Dumars might still be evaluating Willie Green, but he's safe with the team. I'll give you the latest update here and maybe what's going on when it comes to that sort of thing. And then Bryson Graham staying with the Pelicans alongside some injury updates. We got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into the big news around the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis. Bucks down in this series 3-1, and they just suffered an awful blow. Damian Lillard tore his Achilles. He's going to be out basically all of next season is what it looks like, and that kind of sends the Bucks in a massively different direction. They've looked bad in the playoffs. They did not look great in the regular season really for the past 2 years, culminating with them making a head coaching change early on in the tenure last year, kind of surprisingly so, and it just hasn't been what they were hoping it would be. Now, that can be fine. You still have Giannis. He's delivered you a title. He's one of the 3 best players in the league, but at a certain point, is he going to want out? He's been there for 12 years. 12 seasons just sounds wild already that he's been there that long. And all of a sudden now, his future there is more in doubt than ever before. It's been in doubt in the past, and he signed 2 big extensions there, one in 2020, one in 2023. But now that you're basically losing $50 million of salary for all of next year, the Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma trade didn't work out, he's definitely at least going to be evaluating his future. And if the Bucks think they're going to be anything more than a first-round exit next year without Damian Lillard, they are fooling themselves. So if you're him, do you want to stay there? If you're the Bucks and you're the Bucks GM where you now have job security because Horst, their GM, just signed an extension, maybe the best thing to do would be to trade Giannis and see what you can get back for him. Because here's the thing. If they're bad next year or the year after that, the Bucks don't control any of their future draft picks. So one, they do have every incentive to try and be good next year because of that. That means going for the playoffs. But the thing with that is, you don't have tradable assets. Like, they don't have draft picks that they can trade whatsoever, basically, at this point in time. I have a few, and they'll have a little bit more access to them after the draft, but they're in a real rough spot here. And that's because, well, the Pelicans kind of control some of their future picks here. And this is where the Pelicans can benefit from the chaos that's potentially going to unfold in Milwaukee without even getting Giannis. I'm not even talking about trading for Giannis. In fact, I don't know if that's the best move for New Orleans to do. Now, maybe if you compare him with Zion Williamson, that'd be one thing, but I think they'd be looking for Zion back in a trade for Giannis. But we're going to talk about a potential trade tomorrow. Let's look at the draft pick stuff here. Technically, the Pelicans could have gotten the Bucks pick if it was top 4 this year. But the pick is going to end up going to the Brooklyn Nets. It went to Portland, then it went from Portland somewhere else, then it went to the Knicks, then it went to Brooklyn in, I think, the Mikal Bridges trade. So next year, though, in 2026, the Pelicans have a swap with the Bucks. So basically, The Bucks will get a first-round pick. The Pelicans will get a first-round pick. You see where those two picks are, and the Pelicans get the better of the two. The Bucks get the worse of the two. They also have Indiana's pick 5 through 30, as long as it's not in the top 4. In 2027, they also have a swap with the Milwaukee Bucks, with the worst pick going to the Atlanta Hawks. So the Pelicans are in a really good spot here to have these kind of picks, and they're just in a good position, it feels like, here when it comes to kind of future draft picks all of a sudden. I see most favorable in Milwaukee and New Orleans, and then other to Atlanta. Yeah, so it goes to the other pick then goes to the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, that's what it is. I'm reading this correctly. It took me a second. Sometimes the pick protections can get a little bit complicated here. But basically, the next two drafts, it's controlled by New Orleans for the Milwaukee Bucks. If you trade Giannis this offseason and they're bad, let's say, well, then all of a sudden, that pick swap next year becomes real valuable and could potentially be a top 7 pick, top 8 pick, something like that. Definitely a lottery pick if they trade Giannis away. Now, I think they might be angling to try and get their own picks back. You've seen this be a thing recently. And hear me out on this, and we'll look at this more tomorrow. I just want to kind of lay the groundwork for it today because there's other things I want to get into the show, and we can stretch this out over multiple days. You've seen teams go and try and get their own draft picks back. Houston try to get their own draft picks back. You've seen the Nets try and get their own draft picks back. You've seen a number of teams do this. Chicago tried to do it as well. Owning your own draft picks means you can be bad. When you look at the Atlanta Hawks, there was no reason they should have traded both DeJounte Murray and Trae Young because, well, the Spurs own their draft. So if they're bad by tearing it all down, they don't really reap the benefits of it. What you hope for is that you trade Giannis for some first-round picks to a bad team, but you're trading Giannis, it's not going to be a bad team. That's just kind of how it goes, right? So this probably leads to the Milwaukee Bucks trying to facilitate some sort of 3-team trade, maybe along the lines of like, and we'll look at this more tomorrow, where you look at certain players, John Morant could be on the move. Kevin Durant could be on the move. Can there be a 3-team deal that involves the Pelicans sending these Bucks pick swaps back to Milwaukee while not getting Giannis, but maybe getting another player? So you're facilitating a Giannis trade, but getting someone else in return or whatever it is you might want. That's a pretty valuable position to be in. To make any sort of trade worthwhile for the Bucks, New Orleans might need to be involved. That's a ton of leverage there all of a sudden. Those assets look dramatically different and have way more value because of the situation the Milwaukee Bucks find themselves in. Whatever you thought about David Griffin, right? This was why he made that trade with Milwaukee and kicked those first-round picks and swaps out as far as possible to try and outlast Giannis in Milwaukee, his tenure there. It looked dicey, like it wasn't going to happen, particularly after they won that title. But all of a sudden now, with this Damian Lillard injury, and look, we don't root for any sort of injuries. It's, unfortunate that we talk about it in this sense, but it's the reality of the landscape of the league right now. You want something like this. And so all of a sudden, it's pretty open what could happen here for the Pelicans. And these picks all of a sudden start to look really, really valuable. And that could change the complexion of the offseason for the New Orleans Pelicans. What do you think? Do you want to try and get Giannis? Do you want to try and help facilitate a trade for somebody else? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So coming up next, Willie Green might be safe in New Orleans, but it doesn't mean that he's the head coach. What? Let's break down a new report that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's really easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, so you can track all your accounts, investment, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Use it for insights. I found I was spending way too much on food delivery. Now I'm cooking more, I'm budgeting better, I'm saving more money. And instead of juggling multiple apps, because if I got to go to multiple apps, I'm just not going to do this stuff. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals, whether you're saving for a new car, a house, or just a big purchase. Monarch is going to be able to help you with it. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget about the daily Locked On Pelicans newsletter, Locked On Pelicans in your inbox. Just go to Locked On Daily to subscribe or use the link in the comments down below. All right, let's go to a new report from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. So it can be a little hit or miss there sometimes, but this is an intriguing thing, and I don't think this is incorrect in any sort of capacity here. So I'm going to read you an excerpt from this article here. Joe Dumars, well, no, we're not going to read the excerpt. Let me just kind of skip to the point here. At this time, quote, Joe Dumars has remained non-committal on head coach Willie Green's future. However, Green is expected to remain with the organization regardless of whether he will be coaching on the sidelines for the 2025-26 season, sources said. Green is someone Dumars values, and he still holds a lot of respect within the organization, end quote. Okay, don't overthink this right now. One, he's likely going to be the head coach next year. He's likely going to be the head coach next year. This is basically what they're trying to say here is if they end up deciding Willie Green is not going to be the head coach, they're not firing Willie Green per se. He'll be reassigned in some sort of capacity, likely moving to the front office and becoming some sort of advisor to Joe Dumars, advisor to the front office. This basically means they don't want to pay the final year of his contract, which Willie Green is in, without him doing work. You could fire him, he could go take a job elsewhere. This could also be used to put pressure on a team like the Phoenix Suns, who are maybe interested in Willie Green, to pony up a draft pick or whatever draft picks they have. And I don't really know if they actually have any. Let me see. I don't really think that they do. We'll take a look here in a second. That at least that they control. They don't really. They have a first round pick this year, but they don't really control these. And do they have second round picks? We don't need to get into it too much. They might have a pick or two. They're not going to give a first-round pick for a head coach. You might get a second-round pick. This could be leverage to say, we're not going to fire him. We're just going to have him work in the front office. You actually see this all the time. So it's like if you want Willie Green, you're going to have to pay because you're not going to just be able to sign Willie Green. Now, there's a couple of things. That's a big part of this here, too. I still don't know if I believe this, right? This, though, does give Joe Dumars cover that there is no mandate from ownership. And, he said that at his introductory press conference when I was there. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter, right? He's going to say that no matter what. He's not going to come in and say, well, I have a mandate from ownership to keep Willie Green. That would never happen. Part of this job is covering for higher ups, right? This lens makes it look like it's his own decision, even if it isn't, and that protects Gail Benson if there is some sort of mandate, right? Now, moving to the front office is also not uncommon, when you have years left on a contract. The Pelicans did this with assistant coach Phil Weber a number of years ago. They wanted to move on from him. They didn't want him on the bench, but they just didn't want to fire him. And they're like, all right, if we're going to pay you anyway, we may as well have you do some work. More recently in the NFL, you saw the Seattle Seahawks do this with Pete Carroll. They basically fired him as head coach. And because he had another year left on his contract, he was like a special advisor in the front office, something along those lines, right? You're going to do some work for us, but we're removing you from this. And it just means that when the contract expires, goodbye. It's a nice thing to do to a person, right? Potentially, rather than just having them sit out a year, they can stay around the game, all of those things. So this doesn't mean that like Willie Green is super duper safe, in my opinion, but it also kind of does, right? I think it's very difficult to keep, if you do reassign Willie Green in some capacity, then you hire a new head coach. It's rough on Willie Green, and you got to imagine he's not going to like that. But Willie Green is a smart basketball mind too, that having him in the front office could be useful. And if Joe Dumars wants that sort of, insight, okay, like let him have it kind of thing, right? So I think there is a possibility that could happen, but I think this is maybe just like, hey, if a team really ponies up some assets, we'll let him go, but we're not going to just let him go for free. If anything, this is a smart leak to put out there to kind of put some pressure on a team like the Phoenix Suns. And look, I don't think we for sure know exactly how good Willie Green could be. It could be better than we realize. I'll admit it doesn't look particularly great with him as a head coach. But I do think there is more potential there than maybe we realize. He's never really coached a fully healthy team. Even in last season, when they won 49 games, part of it was they did underachieve, and I don't think they kind of reached their full potential, their full ceiling. But there were a ton of injuries that was dealt with that year too, right? You didn't get Brandon Ingram playing 70 games. They were clearly missing a point guard. The year before that, they made the play-in tournament when you didn't have Zion playing much. The year they made the playoffs, albeit with a sub-500 record, no Zion at all that year. We've never seen what Willie Green is capable of doing with a fully healthy roster. Now, here's the thing with that, too. They're not, and we talked about this yesterday, the everydayers know this, they're not going to be fully healthy to start the year. They're not going to be fully healthy to start the year at all. And so when you look at it through that lens, too, like, okay, if you're missing a point guard, how good are they going to be? Now, I also think there's a benefit to keeping Willie Green for another year, just letting him be a lame duck head coach that you're going to move on from at the end of the year. And then you can kind of start fresh when, you know more of your core. If you're going to trade guys away like CJ McCollum, and look, unless you're giving CJ another extension, which it's hard to see happening, they're going to look to trade him this year. He's going to be an expiring contract. You want to get something for him if you can find something for him. If you maybe are going to trade Zion Williamson, let Willie Green coach out a year as you go through this weird transition year, and then bring in your head coach for the future when you kind of know who your core pieces are. That's going to be who you draft in this draft and kind of ends up where your next pick's going to be in the subsequent future, and maybe looks even better because of the stuff going on around Milwaukee. So keeping Willie Green for like a lame duck year, kind of punting in a sense on next year, even though that's not what the Pelicans are really looking to do, isn't the worst thing to do in the future. And look, if it means the Pelicans can then spend on the right head coach, I'm fine with that. I don't see them this summer firing Willie Green, paying him his contract, then hiring a $10 million head coach. I don't really see them hiring a $10 million head coach at all. But that $10 million head coach is more money when you're paying Willie Green and all the assistants and stuff like that versus kind of letting them all walk at the end of their contracts and clearing that salary from your books. Now, it's not a salary cap, right? But it's still double dipping money you're paying. And if you're going to do that, cool. Like, then you can kind of sell me on this idea a little bit more. And maybe Willie Green kind of pulls a rabbit out of a hat here and they end up being really good and you can decide what to do. By then, Willie Green's going to be expensive. If he leads you to the playoffs next year and he's on an expiring deal, he's going to be looking for a big time raise. So, if you want to go cheap on a head coach, the time to do it is now. That's not going to go over particularly well, I don't think, with Michael Malone out there, Taylor Jenkins out there, Mike Brown out there, all guys that I would hire in a second. So if you're going to go cheap, this is the year to do it. It's only going to get more expensive probably in the future, unless you just go cheap again in a year, but that'd be kind of disappointing, right? I wonder how much Sam Cassell would cost, but that would be who I look. But I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up going to the Memphis Grizzlies and being their head coach next season. We'll see, though. The future of Willie Green is not set yet, but at least it sounds like he's going to be remaining with the team, but it would probably only be for a year, in my opinion. Willie Green will go back into coaching. He won't stay in the front office. He'll end up as an assistant head coach somewhere and looking for his next job, and he'll probably get one in the future, given that, he has a playoff track record, at least somewhat, here in New Orleans. So coming up next, another person that's not going anywhere, person reporting, that's GM Bryson Graham. I'll tell you why that's a good thing, but expect some more changes coming. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Wayfair. Spring is here, and that means it's home project season. So whether you're refreshing a room or tackling a full renovation, Wayfair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates like stylish cabinet hardware, you would not believe how much of a difference that makes in a kitchen, by the way. Recently really redid all like the handles to the drawers and everything. It looks fantastic. To major upgrades like new vanities, sinks, or outdoor lighting, Wayfair has quality products for every budget. So I just upgraded the kitchen, which is poles and things like that, ordered off Wayfair. Wasn't that expensive. The room looks fantastic. It looks so much better than it was before. The selection was incredible. Was able to find the right size, exactly what I was looking for. And their free and fast shipping made it easy. You don't need to haul heavy items. Do you have a truck? Can you bring in big pieces of furniture to your home? No, just free, fast shipping delivered right to your door. And they have top brands like GE, Moen, and others at great prices. So Wayfair makes home improvement easy. Get started now at wayfair.com. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And thank you for making the Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm on there every Friday. It's a lot of fun. You got to give that show a listen if you haven't before. All right, couple of other just updates around the team here. And that is this was kind of still an open question that we haven't gotten a concrete answer to, but I think we're starting to get a clearer picture of this. General Manager Bryson Graham is going to be staying with the team this season. Saying that for a specific reason here. That's per Mark Stein in his Steinline newsletter. Again, I recommend subscribing to that one for some of the best news updates and insider info out there in the NBA. It sounds like Bryson Graham is staying put. In such a pivotal draft season for New Orleans where they've likely been scouting those top 5, 6, 7, 8 prospects all year long, this is a smart move. This is a very smart move. Now, just if you if you were to let him go or something, it's not like you lose all that information. It's stored in their computers, all those things. They have what's already been out there. But the work on that is going to continue. And you may as well let someone kind of go through this process because this is an important draft pick for the team that's going to really set the tone of the future. I just did a tankathon spin. Pelicans up to #1, Charlotte 2, Philly 3rd, and then Washington 4. So you need to nail this pick, right? If it's 1 or 2, it's pretty easy. If it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's where it gets a little bit interesting. You need all the intel you have. You need to have people you trust kind of helping point the direction of who you're going to draft. Bryson Graham has done a very good job here in New Orleans. I think it's a smart thing to keep him here. And I think it's smart that Joe Dumars is doing that and keeping some continuity for all that. He can also make changes in the future. And while I wouldn't advocate for getting rid of Bryson Graham, look, you saw this when David Griffin took over. You saw a very similar thing here. David Griffin came in. He hired Swin Cash. He hired Trajan Langdon. Those were kind of the two big hires. And then he kept a lot of Dell Demps' staffers there, either through his whole tenure or for a couple of seasons, basically until their contracts expired. Then they left, and he replaced them with people that he wanted. So you do it over time. You don't come in and bring in an entirely new front office. You do this piecemeal. One guy here, 1 or 2 people here. Next year, 2 more, 1 more, whatever it might be. And you do this slowly over time. So it doesn't mean that some of these people in the Pelicans front office are 100% safe in the future. So if there's people in there you don't like, whatever, there's changes that might come in subsequent seasons, not necessarily all right away, because if you do that, you're setting yourself up for disaster when it comes to free agency, when it comes to scouting. And look, it's not just the top 8 guys. You scout all the players out there. You're going to bring in tons of people for workouts that aren't in your draft range because you want that data on them for the future, right? A lot of what this draft scouting work does is set you up for trades in the future. Oh, I scouted this guy 2-3 years ago. Here's what I liked about him. Here's the info we have on him so that when you go and maybe try and pull a trade off, you have more information than just what you're seeing with the players out there on the court. That's a really important thing that teams kind of focus on that I think gets lost in this. This is so you have information on these guys in the future. Oh, I talked to this guy's head coach, all of that stuff. He's a hard worker, or mentally a little bit weak, something like that. Whatever it might be, you have that information in the future. They have binders of materials of basically every player and detailed reports about them in the league. That's what these front offices are doing, like Monday through probably Monday, especially during the season, is just compiling reports. You have someone that's basically trying to figure out future contracts for every player in the league. So if you trade someone for someone and in 2 years they're going to be a free agent, you have an idea of probably what their contract is going to be. It helps with your future salary cap planning. All of that stuff is really important when trying to kind of be forward thinking when it comes to, an evolving collective bargaining agreement, an evolving salary cap situation, all of those things, and like moves you're going to need to make in the future. And often this is kind of like chess, right? One move might happen now, but it's going to lead to something in the future, and you might not see it right away, but you'll hopefully eventually get there. That's what these kind of front offices do a ton of work on when it comes to that sort of thing. So Bryson Graham sounds like he's staying. I think that's good here because they've done a good job drafting. They've done a really good job with undrafted free agents too. And that's something that this team needs to hit on, whether it's depth or just what have you. Filling out the margins is an important part of building an NBA roster. So a couple of other things. We got 2 medical updates here. The Pelicans announced today that Brandon Boston Jr. recently underwent successful arthroscopic surgery on his left ankle. The procedure was performed on Friday by Dr. Richard Ferkel at the Southern California Orthopedic Institute in Los Angeles. His recovery timetable is approximately 3 to 4 months. Kelly Olynyk underwent a minimally invasive surgery on his left heel and ultrasound-guided tendon debridement. The procedure was performed on Friday by Yon Tudor Jones and guided by Jared Antflick at Fortius Clinic in London. His recovery timetable is approximately 3 to 4 months. But these guys missing a chunk of the offseason. That's fine. One thing to note on all of that, you didn't hear Oshner mentioned once. We talked about this last week. Oshner has very minimal involvement with the team. It's just basically like a marketing tool for them. So they're allowed to get surgery from whoever they want, seek other opinions. You saw both players do that here. So something to, some context when it comes to that sort of thing. So there you go with some injury updates. That means we'll get updates on other players, right? We'll get ones on Herb Jones. We'll probably get one on Trey Murphy as, they progress in their injury rehabilitation and all of that. So I like that the Pelicans are sending out these kind of updates, even if it's like, oh, that kind of came out of nowhere, as we already are in the off season here. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. We are talking trades tomorrow. I got some big ones for you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Don't miss tomorrow's show. It'll also be in your inbox. Locked On Pelicans daily in your inbox as well. Subscribe. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with you all tomorrow.